So, the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about mentorship. And as our investigators or early career faculty, they will be starting mentoring others. And, really it's kind of a change from going from a mentee when you're maybe part of the COBRE, and most of those are mentored projects, and then moving on to being a mentor. And we're gonna ask some of our experts here for their opinions, as well as their how they've kind of facilitated that move. But let me have them introduce themselves first. If you can kind of introduce yourselves, say like which COBRE you've been part of, and then maybe what kind of mentees you have right now in your mentee portfolio? Are they, postdocs, are they faculty, are they students? Starts off.
Hi, I'm Leslie Brick. I'm the Associate Director of the Quant Sciences Program and an Associate Professor at Brown in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. And I was originally part of the Injury COBRE, and they funded a pilot project of mine that I quickly submitted as an R01, and it got funded before I could really do much on the COBRE itself. But I definitely benefited from that the early mentorship from the COBRE, but also from a lot of my mentors along the way. So right now I have an R01 from NIDA that I'm MPI with Nicole Nugent on, and we have 3 research assistants who are bachelor's level. So I consider myself a mentor to them. I have 1 postdoc who submitted an F32 that was awarded, that's actually attached to the R01. He's in his first year and will be starting his second year. And then I also mentor some folks on the suicide T32 at Brown as well. So I have kind of a couple of research assistants, a couple of postdocs. I've mentored 2 other postdocs who finished up and are now faculty. And then I'm also a mentor on several K awards. So for junior faculty.
Great, thanks. So Jared, thanks for joining us. We're just doing an introduction. What COBRE you're part of, and then sort of what your mentee portfolio looks like right now.
Sure. I apologize for my falling into my chair in the middle of introductions. So my name is Jared Salatin. I'm Associate Professor of Psychiatry, and I'm a core director of Bradley Hospital's Sleep and Circadian Rhythms and Child and Adolescent Mental Health core. And I'm really glad Leslie mentioned mentorship of post-bac RAs, because I think oftentimes we don't talk about people that we employ as mentees, but they really are. So my mentor profile, I do a little bit of everything. So I have 4 postbacs who work under me. Some of them are on R01 driven studies. Some of them are part of our COBRE Center. I view them as mentees, as trainees, and we spend a lot of time thinking about how their couple years with us is a stepping stone to where they want to be. I also sit on some graduate student dissertations as an advisor. I have a full-time postdoctoral fellow. I share a postdoctoral fellow with another mentor. I mentor psychology, clinical psychology resident students. One the past year, one this year, one next year. They just matched, so that's always a fun engagement in the lab. In addition, through our COBRE role, I do a lot of junior faculty. So I'm direct mentor on a couple of research projects, engaged in the COBRE. Some of that predates when I was core director, and then also as a core director, we spent just a lot of time helping you get where they need to get. So mentoring is really part and parcel to my day at really every level. Oh, and undergraduate honors thesis. Happy, really.
My name is Olin Liang. I'm Associate Professor of Medicine in the Division of Hematology Oncology. Many years back, I joined a stem cells and aging COBRE phase 2. Went through that 5 years. And then During the final years of phase two, I developed a core facility to offer the lentivirus construction service and actually put that into phase three as a core of the phase three. And now I have a number of R1s, recently received another one. And I have three junior faculty mentees. They're physician scientists, and they are also successfully funded recently, big or small. And I have 5 research scientists in my lab. They're all PhDs. And in addition to my own lab research program, I also direct the cell and genome engineering shared resource of Brown Cancer Center. And I also serve on the American Heart Association Career Development Award Committee. So I have a very clear structure, how much you should view at this stage, how you structure your career development. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, I can see you all doing lots of mentorship and a lot of folks that are seeking out your services. I'm guessing there's probably other people that come looking for mentorship too. But I'm just kind of wondering, who do you prioritize? How do you kind of manage that so it's not overwhelming? One, that you can give the time the mentee needs, you can give that time to that person, but also you can protect your time to do the other work that you need to do this part of your career. Leslie, you want to start us off again?
That's the golden question. I think it's always a balance, and I think it's a ever evolving question for me. And I think I try and approach when somebody approaches me, I try and find a way to help them at whatever level that might be, whether it's working really closely with them or giving them some kind of broad advice. But I think over my career, that's changed a lot. And as I've gotten senior, more further along, I've been able to balance it. And I think a lot of times what helps is finding, common interests and common grounds with who you're mentoring so that it feels more fun and rewarding. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's always hard to juggle your interests versus your mentees. I think the other part that I take with me is I've had some really great mentors in my life, and I've also had some really not as great mentors. And so I try and find that balance for myself where I feel like maybe somebody didn't do as good a job with me. Maybe I can learn from that and approach it differently for my trainees and my mentors. And then the mentors who I've had who've done a really great job, I try and strive toward being and bringing that with me. But I do think I don't know that, maybe somebody else can fill in here. I don't know that ever just gets solved. I think as you go through your career, there's always competing demands. And so part of what makes this job exciting is having to always kind of navigate that and learn along the way.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything Leslie said. I think, my graduate mentor, I think I was his first graduate student, second, but we all came in at the same time. So it was a really junior mentor. And then my postdoc mentor, very senior mentor, seen a lot of people. And so I think, there is a growth in mentoring trajectory. And in retrospect, I look back on sort of, working with a really junior person versus working with a senior person, understanding that they navigate this world differently. And I think, as Leslie indicated, as we've grown up and become mentors, we've sort of tried to find that middle path. And, for me, communication is really crystally important because I spend a lot of time working with mentors and mentees to understand, or the mentees rather, to understand that, what the arrangement that we set up when we first rotated into the lab is not a contract. It's not a immovable object. That, as their interests change and our interest changes and our dynamic evolves, that sort of social contract between mentor and mentee starts to change. And so we do a lot of reevaluation and a lot of continual conversation. And so without it being too much structure. And I think finding that balance is what makes it dynamic for us, makes it mentees, it relies on feedback from the mentees to keep it going. There are mentees that have standing meetings week. Yes, they take a block out of time, but it's critical for their grade. And then at certain points, they pull back a little bit and say, well, this time is here for you, whether if you want it. You might not use it this week, and it's relying on the mentee to ask for it. So transitioning from structure to backstop, but not sort of forefront sort of structure, I think helps with the life cycle of the mentee, right? And that makes room for the next generation to come in, where maybe your attention has to be a little bit more structured as the senior mentees sort of start being a little more self-sufficient, but always being there for them in the background. And so balancing that is really critical. And I think the other piece is junior in your career, it's, you're looking to develop those skills. So you sort of say yes to every opportunity and everyone that walks in the door. And then now starting to think a little bit about, am I really the right fit for you? Is this the right fit? Happy to have conversations, happy to chat about it, but am I the right fit as a mentor, or is there someone else that serves you a little bit better? And becoming slightly more selective in when you say yes to those relationships.
Thanks. So, Owen, what do you think? I mean, how do you take people into your lab and make that decision?
Right. So the ultimate goal for this relationship, mentor-mentee, is for the mentee to succeed, right? So you have to choose a mentee that has the most potential. That's determined by commitment, diligence, and productivity. Those are the three criteria I look. So commitment, do you really commit to this career? How diligent do you work? What was your productivity? So as a candidate yourself, count for 30% of this process. Mentor, the team of mentors counts 35%, if you want to write that down. The research you do counts 30%. The ability you can explain your science at Thanksgiving dinner counts for 5%, right? So if you have this structure, then you know you're a good candidate. And I know whether you're a good candidate, right? So you come to me, what is a good fit? I judge you, you judge me. In order to judge me, you see my track record. How was my funding track record? How is it current funding track record? Because I have to guarantee a space for you to work in my lab. How many mentees I have, how successfully do they do, then you judge on me. So mutual assessment, then we decide if this is a good fit. So I don't waste my time on you. You don't waste your time on me. All right?
Sure. Thank you. So let's go back to something Jared was talking about. I mean, it is somewhat dynamic. Things change, people's interests change. How do you kind of continue to assess that your expectations are aligning with the expectations of the mentee of what kind of success looks like for them, and that they're in the right place, and, working with you as they're. I think, Jared, you said there's no kind of contract, but do you guys use anything that's written down? You kind of say, okay, these are our goals for this year, this 6 months, whatever. You kind of go through that process with your mentees. Maybe we'll start with you all.
So from my point of view, I think because I've gone through this process, I know what opportunities are there.
Mhm.
So for example, beginning of the year, perhaps look at Rhode Island Foundation. whether you have opportunity. In April, Physicians Inc. have funding opportunity. By June, perhaps you submit R21. So I see the structure of the year. I can give you advice. When do you feel comfortable to put in your grant or any funding request? So ultimately, I think the only criteria for me for successful mentee is they get funded. That's all.
So when they start with you, do you say, this is the timeline you're expected to put in a grant, in the next 6 months, year, whatever?
Absolutely. So when you have a due date, you start working. It's, but even you have a due date, you don't work like 6 months ahead of that. You work almost 3 months to that date. You start working. So by 3 times, what is your draft that I want to spend time on you? So time is very precious. We really have to be effective with this structure.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different tools that people use to write stuff down. There's individual development plans, there are mentor-mentee contracts, there are, goal documents, and I think those are only as worth. They can either be very helpful or they can be worth the paper. And I think the difference is if you do that exercise, it could be a really productive hour together. You write down the goals, think about what is attainable versus what is ambitious, and what is sort of, what are the benchmarks that are going to get you to where because we all know in our subfields, like, yeah, this fellowship would be really great to apply to, or you're going to need a trainee award, this conference that's going to set you up this way. But if you write all of that down in July and then you never look at that paper again, I find it not that particularly helpful. And so we do quite a bit of reevaluation and making sure that our meetings, our mentor-mentee meetings, are not just about product, but that they actually reevaluate where we are in the trajectory. Because if the mentee's goals have changed, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm a research-funded faculty. So my pathway was postdoc to a K award, to a co-working project, to an R01, and that's the trajectory we know. And a lot of people come in and they pick their mentor because they want to find the path that they're mentored to. But if you start deviating from that, we have to adapt dynamically and make sure that you are connected with the voices that know those other paths, because I might not know those other paths, and make sure that you get connected in those ways. And so, for instance, psychology internship is a really interesting training program because it's rapid. It's 1 year, you're in and you're out. I see you for 4 hours a week. How are we going to make good on that 4-hour a week research rotation? I do put strict expectations at the very beginning. I said, 4 hours a week, what can you do? You can do a conference abstract. It's the deadline's in December. It fits nicely in the year. You come in July, you do some work, you submit a conference abstract. And then what you do in the springtime depends on where you're going next. So if you decide that you're going to do a postdoc and stay here, well, maybe we expand that project a little bit. If you're going to do a postdoc and leave, well, then can we get that into a manuscript that's not too much intensive for you to write? If you're going to leave academia, go different. I look at the year, or I look at the 2-year, or whatever the scope of time we have together, and think, where can we find some benchmarks for success, so that regardless of whatever happens, you walk out with a product. And then where are the opportunities for exploration and discovery? And we might go in different directions, and it evolves. But so, like in all things, it's a balance between structure and agility.
Yeah, I really, I share that same sentiment of like being really flexible with people, and my research interests are also in individual variability. But every mentee you work with is at a different phase, and they have different interests, they have different strengths, they have different weaknesses. And so, one of my goals when I work with somebody, especially formally, is to get a sense of what their goals are. Because I think at the end, really matters to them is that they're meeting the goals that they set for themselves. And if those goals change, which they often do as you learn and grow, then I want them to be comfortable to like approach me and say, hey, I really thought I wanted this for my career, but I don't think that's what I really want to do. And a lot of the times that when I've seen trainees really struggle is when they're trying to meet the goals of other people or the expectations of other people. So I think it's really important for communication with the mentee and making sure that they're comfortable telling you when their goals are changing, and what those goals are, because if they are on a different trajectory than you, that's okay. You may not be the right person to give them every piece of information. And so that helps you help them better. When communication is clear, when goals are clear, self-evaluating those goals. I like to have my trainees at whatever level I'm formally mentoring them, self-evaluate themselves before we meet. And then often what we do is we sit down and we say, okay, what did you say your strengths were? And what did you say the places you want to grow are? And then a lot of times my evaluation of them meets up with their self-evaluation. And so this is especially really great with my research assistants who are a little bit lower, and sometimes they need more feedback. And I have found many, many times that they often identify the areas that they're weakest or they need growth. And so it really helps to have their own reflections kind of guide the conversation. And I think that builds a lot of trust and communication so that when they're telling me how they're doing and what their plans are, I can best help them.
We frequently, we're working with our mentees, developing skills, and those skills could be laboratory skills, those could be data analysis skills. But there's more to mentorship than that. There's sponsorship, there's getting them involved in networks, and helping them with their career. You work with your mentees around that.
Thanks for bringing that up. I think ultimately the most important is a firm commitment from your department chair. If you have a firm commitment of your department to support your development, then you have a good chance. If you don't have that firm commitment, then perhaps you have to seek alternatives. That's what I make clear with the mentee.
And how about kind of getting them involved with other folks, either nationally, societies, getting them on study section, whatnot.
I think, well, I think that is, that's the stuff that costs us nothing, right? And, when you're, and it's also one of the benefits when we have really senior mentors, like that really junior mentors, which is one of the reasons why mentors. But I do a lot of that. Sleep research is a very small field, so it's beneficial in that respect. If you get invited to write a chapter, the mentee should be involved. If you get invited to do reviews, mentored reviews are ways that, even, yes, it's work for the mentee, but then their name is seen by the editor. You start to circulate their name, which might not be otherwise as seen. I've encouraged mentees to take on service, which again carves a little bit of their time off, but exposes them to the broader field, especially if they're new to our field. And our field is particularly welcoming for trainees. There's also trainee service opportunities that basically have very limited work scope. So it's a nice return on investment, but it introduces you to a broader group. And so, that I think is a big part of sort of the outside work of mentoring, which is getting you integrated and building and scaffolding a community that they might not have otherwise been exposed to.
Right. So the American Heart Association put it as a requirement in the Career Development Award application. You have to have at least one mentor or mentor in the team of mentors that is outside of your institution. So it's a structured way to force you reach out to others. That's very good. The second thing is that seek opportunity to be a junior reviewer on a study section. So right now, it's very encouraged that in a formal study section, you have 2 or 3 junior investigators that to train in the review process. If you can get on that list, it's very helpful. So you know the insider story, how grants are reviewed.
Yeah, I couldn't second that more. I served on a couple study sections as a postdoc or as a junior faculty member, not in the formal early career program, although now I'm a standing member. But there is the formal early career research training program that NIH runs that is an incredible program because you get very limited work, you get 1 or 2 applications. So it's not a heavy lift, but you get trained, you see it. And we modeled in our society, our professional society, we actually run grant reviewer trainings because if you understand how the grants get reviewed, it makes you a better grant writer. And exposing trainees to that process, I think is incredibly worthwhile. So there is the formal ECR program, and I encourage.
Another way that I have integrated, especially postdocs who are kind of in this zone of needing to secure their own funding and thinking about how they're gonna, develop a network. I do a lot of statistical consulting on grants, and so oftentimes there's more requests than I actually have time for, and so I use that as often an opportunity to work my trainees into some of my professional networks, and then that gives them some experience in grant writing. A lot of times we will meet with the investigative team to see kind of what needs they have, what they're looking for. And then I work with the postdoc to do a lot of the writing or the analytic plan or the analyses of the power calculation, supervised. And then over time, they get more and more confident. And then eventually I don't need to supervise them. And they can have those skills to take with them when they network as well. And so it both gives them the skills that I'm hoping to pass on, but also allows them to network with some, national level and sometimes international level.
Now, I think a couple of you mentioned working with primary. And if you could comment on maybe one lesson you learned from a good mentor you had, one lesson you learned from that. And also comment, did you ever go through mentorship training?
Sure, I can jump off. So I did go through mentorship training, the advanced CTR mentorship program, the 8-week program. I did that before I took on any formal mentee, so I encourage folks to do it. I've had extremely good mentors, and I've had a couple mentors that on the whole I don't view as strong, but particular strengths. And then even the good mentors had some deficiencies in their mentoring. So I don't think it's as clear as a binary state, but like a good lesson. Sponsorship, you already talked about. I mean, mentors that are going to think about you, as part of their network and put you in front of people. And that can be as simple as CCing into an email. That can be as simple as looping you into a Zoom meeting. That can be actually introducing you to some mentors that make that space for you. That's always there. I really like the approach that my postdoc mentor had, which is we had a standing hourly meeting every week that was on her calendar, but it was up to me to use it. So if I didn't send her an agenda, she cleared her calendar the night before, but it was always there. I could always claim that time. So you have support that's unmovable, but without the pressure. Versus I've had some mentors where when they get busy, you can't meet with them. And I often think, and I remember what that felt like as a trainee and feeling like, wait a second, just because you're busy, I'm drowning here. I need to meet. And so I try to never put my mentees into that worry that, no matter how busy we get, if I have to cancel something, there's always an understanding of they're being made up, right? It's not I'm too busy to meet with you. Say, hey, we're going to slide this to here. And so I try to take those two lessons of giving structure without too much overbearing structure, so that they feel like they have a rubber underneath them, even if it's not seen always.
So, personally, I never had a formal career development trainee. But it's important that I create opportunity for myself. It's also important. I spent many years in the Harvard system. I went through Harvard Stem Cell Institute. Competition is extremely hard. Meet on Saturday morning, 8 o'clock for lab meetings. So those environments, you're almost invisible. There are too many outstanding trainees in the group. So the only way you can stand out is create your own opportunity in that environment. So if you can carve out a niche of science of your own to create your own opportunity to be your own mentor as well.
I think there's a couple of themes that I've heard come up here, and one of them is this idea of having multiple mentors. And I definitely encourage that of people, because no one person can be everything to you. And so, I try and be transparent about, the limitations of the perspective that I'm coming from when I give advice, and the fact that I may not be right, and that it's good to sometimes talk to other people who are also successful, because having multiple perspectives is usually better than having one. And along that note, like I said, no one person can give you everything. And so what I have tried to do in my own situations with my mentors, I've had stronger ones and I've had less strong ones, but what I try and take from every one of them is identifying, what were they able to give me? And even the ones that maybe I didn't feel as strongly about, I'm able to kind of like take some lesson from them. And so the best mentors I've had, I think, consistent kind of what Jared is saying, is I felt like they genuinely cared about me, and they thought about me, and they put me forward. And they did these things that don't cost anything to them, but shows me that they're genuinely, they have my best interests at heart. And so that's kind of like, best case scenario, you have a mentor who really genuinely cares about your progress and that you're meeting your goals and all that. And then the ones that are less strong, we're all human. And so sometimes it's a matter of personalities, like, my mentorship style may not be best for everybody. And likewise, Jared may be, better for other people. So I think I try and also approach just the whole mentorship thing as a matching of, what is your style and what is my style? And can we figure out the best way forward? And can I give you the pieces that I need to give you and help you get to where you need to go? And then is there something else you need? Is there another mentor who can help fill in the gaps that I can't fill in? And so I try and really, team science, I take very seriously, because one person can't do it all. So that applies to mentorship as well.
And one of the things our department has instituted, which I think is brilliant, are non-evaluative mentors. So yes, you have secondary mentors, but those often the co-mentors have as much stake in you and your work as the primary mentors. And so having non-evaluative people whose relationship to you is nothing other than a voice in a room and someone to talk to, I think I didn't have as a postdoc. The postdocs have now. I think it's incredible, because it gives that different perspective of someone who's not your boss, not your lab manager, not your funder, stake in the game, just there to talk to you. And I get that, and I'm actually serving as one of those now. And I think it's been really enjoyable, because it takes the pressure off of us too, as the mentors. And, there is no work to talk about. It's just, how are you doing? What opportunities are you taking advantage of? Do you feel like you have the resources you need? Are there doors I can open for you that aren't being opened? And so, seeking these mentors can be in very formalized roles that have money attached to them, and then can be very informally, and just someone who you trust and someone who takes an interest in your career.
I think that's important too, especially when there's a mismatch between the mentor and a mentee, because it gives the mentee, a person that they might be able to go to they have concerns. They know they're not being evaluated, so there's that kind of power dynamic isn't there for them. So yeah, I think, kind of setting up structure so that it's okay if it doesn't work out, not everybody is made for each other, but giving mentees, support in other ways that give them an out, and a way to talk to somebody else.
Jared, I want to thank you for the plug for the advanced CTR mentorship training course. And, it is something that the advanced CTR has run now. I think it was 2017 when we started. I'm part of the group that runs that course. We've trained over 250 faculty so far, but it is something that's open to all faculty, Brown, URI, the VA. So if it's something that you think you're ready to move on to, please join us. Our next session will be in July. Our next course, we usually run the course twice a year. We have varying formats, both online and in person. You did it when you did it, but
It was the pandemic, so it was all online, but incredibly helpful. I might want to do it again.
well, actually, we have the online community now. You need heard enough from me. Let's open it up for questions. Yes.
Question about the methods. And so, like, there's the latest methods that you could spend a lot of money on, like for the pilot, small amount of money, and you buy mice, you pay for people to work in the lab, you buy reagents, and then you also do like some latest technologies. How do you find the balance? How do you new technology? How do you get the RON funded? Yeah.
I think in that case, the best way is to collaborate because you don't have the expertise, you don't have resource, or even the instrumentation. I think if you collaborate with the expert who had all that, whereas you provide the theme for them to have a purpose into the mutual interest.
I think that's really good advice. And, my research core does a lot of instrumentation and putting instruments in hands of pilot projects and research projects. Some of those, we have to think about what's the scope of the pilot, what's the goal, right? Because the goal of a pilot is often to get the big, right? So being very targeted about it. Be after feasibility, or be after demonstration of concept, or be after even a paper, or are we not? Are we just after some snippets of proof of concept? That's going to change how much I put in your hands. It's going to change how much involvement the core is going to have. And this balancing act between training you to be the expert and accelerating you to do the pilot so that you can then go get the grant. I mean, that's the balance. And, the hope is that through all of these mechanisms that we have, that the community grows. And I think the product of that is that you're not in it alone, right? So it's you get this pilot award for a year. You're not writing an R01 with just you on the masthead, right? As Leslie said, it's team science, and that's going to be the people that are in these cores and that you collaborate with. So it's getting you into the team, bringing your perspective, enriching the team, but then using and leveraging the team to grow you, right? So you're not in it alone in that respect. You don't have to set up 100% independence on all of these methods just to get to the next stage. That's why it's about getting you into the fabric so that you can grow from there.
The nice thing about collaboration too is that you can discover the pieces that you want to integrate into your work, and then the pieces that you're happy with somebody else just doing.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely things that I've thought I've really wanted to do, and then once I got into the nitty gritty, I'm like, you know what? I can just have a collaborator do that part.
Someone else could do
Yeah,
that.
like I like this work, but not enough to be on the ground doing it. And so sometimes you learn that in a pilot project or with a collaborator, and then it can, help you isolate exactly what you want to grow your expertise.
Thank you for joining us. That's okay.
Apologies for being late. We have another symposium going. I just gave a talk. It was just late, so I'm so sorry.
That's fine. No worries. Maybe you can just introduce yourself and tell us, which cohort Ray you've been associated with, and maybe a little bit about who your mentees look like now, you know, what stage of career they're in.
Okay, so I'm part of the, like, I'm currently associate professor of medicine. I had joined Brown back in 2014, recruited by Dr. Quisenberry. Became a part of Cobra 2014. And since I think it was absolutely transformative for my career. And currently also I am a co-leading a cancer biology program with the Mello Cancer Center. And I'm also a co-director of pathobiology graduate program. So maybe you have another person who cannot say no to things. But I think these leadership roles, I think gave a lot of insight and are ways to give back.
Asking the audience a question, but yeah.
Hello, I'm Kristen from the Center for Neuromodulation, and COBRAs offer a little bit of funding support for the mentors through the admin store. Are there any other funding sources for mentees that can secure some effort of their mentors, whether it be department or through some type of administration fund? Having a protected effort support, I think, is helpful. But are there any other funding resources that mentees have to support them?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I will say, you know, we fund our mentors, our research project leader mentors as well. And that was kind of unusual because, I mean, for 25 years, and I don't think I have ever got any funding whatsoever. And it's usually just kind of assumed you do it, but no funding's attached to it. But I'd be interested to know if the panel, you know, has other mechanisms for receiving funding.
So I feel that the funding is going to be, for this specific role, is going to be always an issue. And I feel that this is unusual that COBRAs are offering this funding to ensure really that there is mentoring in place. It's just not on the paper. And then you have a kind of real commitment. But I feel that there are other ways to secure the mentor network. And I feel that through COBRAs, there are mechanisms to, just like for the graduate students, there is this thesis committee. So I feel that there are mechanisms to really engage several faculty, senior faculty members to help you. And it can be done formally through, through COBRA administration, or, support you with you reaching out to the individuals and form this kind of an informal committee to guide you, because and typically I would say that I've done this for myself. I reached out to multiple members of the faculty that are senior level, and really using their expertise for either career development questions or for scientific questions. So I feel that we have to be a little bit more proactive, and typically nobody said ever no. Like if you approach someone, would you be my mentor? I need your help with this, and then you have these meetings once in a while. Nobody ever said, I'm not available. I think that the faculty want to be back to you and to the early stage investigators, because we've all been there. So I feel that maybe securing, it's not the great answer to your question, but securing funding is going to be difficult there, with recognition that will be optimal, but I'm not sure this is always going to be. So there are maybe other means to secure this network of partners.
I think it's very case by case. Some departments do have endowment. Some department chairs have discretionary fund. So you can speak with your leadership, whether they put this in the priority. You can carve out a small percentage of the fund from the department endowment to support that. And so that's the conversation between you and your department chair.
Yeah, and without speaking for our department, I mean, psychiatry's been having a conversation recently, because not only are is mentorship typically not paid for, it sometimes costs mentors. Right, so I mean, in above and beyond research and lab space and such, so particularly in psychology, mentorship, there are training consortium fees for postdocs and pre-docs that come from the mentors that mentees don't really know about, right? They sort of show up and do their thing and but don't realize that we're paying the fee to have them. So the department, I think, has been working on finding ways to make the act of mentorship not something that's solely dependent on the wealth of the PI's sort of lab, so that, you know, PIs that have less resources can have that fee figured out so that they can still be mentors, because they still have value to add. So, you know, actually subtracting the negative is a value added in some of those contexts. But, you know, the COBRI mechanism of funding mentors is incredible. And as others have said, I think relatively great.
I think the only thing that I would add to all the things that have already been said is that there may be some foundations that provide, you know, pilot or mentored projects that provide a small percentage. I can think of one that I don't want to say because I can't remember, but I think that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention might have like a mentorship grant mechanism where the mentor gets a small percentage of effort. So small foundation grants might be another option.
So I think I just want to add this mentorship from a leadership point of view as a department chair. If you look far enough for the return, then you would want to invest. So that's back to my point. Does this candidate have a firm commitment from the department for the career development? If that condition met, as a mentor, I have much easier time to have a conversation with the department chair because the leadership sees the return in a few years down the road. So in that case, I may like to have some support.
Right, and staying in academia too, a member of promotions committees that have been on, you know, that is looked at. Reviewed for promotion is have you been mentoring and how successful your mentees have been? Yes.
Yes, my name is Karen Jennings Mathis. I'm part of Star Colby. And my question pertains to what I've heard thus far on the panel around mentorship and mentee. And it seems as though a lot of conversation is centered around graduate students or postdocs. And my question would be, how do you, if at all, navigate mentorship across levels of education outside of the terminal degree postdoc? You know, research has suggested that you need to start earlier in the pipeline. And so are you providing mentorship in some capacity to your undergraduate students or even earlier to your local high schoolers, et cetera? And if so, how do you manage that? And how do you say yes? When do you say no? Or are you not doing that at all and why?
All of the above. I mean, so we get a lot of requests from high school students. The hospital stands in our way of bringing them into the lab in many capacities, and there's IRB issues and other things like that. But I do a lot of, it's hard to say yes to everything you get, but you get a lot of these things of, can I interview for my senior project? Or can I talk to you about this research topic? And those can be really rewarding if you say yes to them sparingly, because, you know, there's a lot of students and they look up around and they look up faculty and you get a lot of emails. But if you do some of those and you get those students excited about science, you're planting that seed very early in, right? And you're exposing them to what science and academics look like. We get undergrads at every level, kids who volunteer in the lab and have very little responsibility up to honors thesis students. And, you know, spending a lot of time thinking about, you know, how can we help them get to where they go, but recognizing that the earlier in your career stage, the less rigid you are in your goals, right? So they might think that your science is the coolest thing in the world on September 15th, and by December 10th are completely checked out. And you have to be okay with that at some level. And recognizing that if you get a really good undergrad, that's a reward, but that's not the expectation, right? Your job is there to expose them to the lab and give them some opportunities, and you might not see them after the first semester. So being flexible again is helpful with that. But it's really rewarding because if you get the really good ones, And the ones that really like what they're doing with you, they'll stick around for a few years. They'll contribute to abstract papers and manuscripts and help you code data. Yeah.
There's a Summer at Brown program for high school students to take, have the college experience, and I've taught it for the past 7 or so years. And, I love high school students. They're so much fun. They're difficult in their own way, but, it's been really fun to, be doing my kind of day-to-day job here in, psychiatry at Brown, where I'm working with faculty level, postdoc level, and then every summer I work with high school students. And the difference is huge. And it's always a good reminder of where we all came from at one point in time. And they have all kinds of questions that kind of remind me of, gosh, it's very different when you're, 16, 17 years old thinking about your future. And I recently got an email from one of my students from a couple years ago, and she is looking to go to graduate school, and she wanted to volunteer in a lab for part of the summer. So one of my students actually came into our lab for the summer and did some data coding. So I think it's really rewarding to work with people across levels, and I do think it's really important to kind of meet people, meet students, meet, all levels.
If opportunity arises, then I would take, but I engage in the Leadership Alliance program. So each summer they send students from less competitive colleges and universities to our place to learn. Sometimes it's a mutual education to know their background. It's very educational for me. Mm-hmm. And then many years later, when they write you an email, they show a picture of them standing in front of a poster in a conference, rewarding, so that you have contributed to their success, especially when they come from a neighborhood. One of them wrote that most of the youth in their neighborhood have a few years in jail. So it's almost standard trajectory for them. And then when he became 30 years old, had his own child, you realize that life doesn't go on like this. So he changed his trajectory and applied for this internship in my lab. So we learned from each other. And then he went on to have a very good career. So that's very rewarding. So if you have this opportunity to mutually enrich each other, I definitely would.
So if I may just add to this, is that I also engage the postdocs, graduate students in the same kind of so that in the mentor. So you not only mentor yourself, but you kind of prepare others also for this mentoring role. So there is, for example, for high school, there is this Mentor 100 program that graduate students from my lab, they go and they meet them at the school. There are some, some experiments, some small experiments, and the ones that are most interested, sometimes we kind of on board for the summers. For Leadership Alliance, it's another program. It's very, very, it's a really great program. I feel that I've been also involved for many years. It's a program to help underrepresented groups in science. But I feel that it is expected in my lab that everybody at some point, if they, once they are ready for this, you want to match them as soon as possible. But when they are ready, you see that they are going strong with the project, and then they have time to maybe work with the mentee, then it's expected that they will develop this relationship. And I will tell you this, that Olin was saying, this is how you learn how to mentor this type of questions. This was absolutely incredible learning experience for me, and also then of course teaching others right now how to mentor, what works, what doesn't. And I will tell you that I've learned that your time is absolutely like the most precious thing that you can be done. That's
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you to the panelists, and